Okay, I thought of an icebreaker while we're waiting for people to trickle in. Toilet paper roll. Does it go over or does it go under?
That has to go over. Like the under one, nah.
Over.
I agree. Over.
Over. Yes.
Yeah.
Last time I asked that, there were a couple of unders and it was like a full-on war. And science-wise, technically the right answer is over because I guess there's like less transfer beams. Science stuff, yeah.
It feels right that way. Like it's like, I don't know, pulling under, trying to get the paper, it's too much. Like
yeah,
right there. Okay, I feel like this is a good amount. Should we get going now? What does that mean? Okay. Well, hi everyone. My name is Katie and I am part of the Outdoor Adventures Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force. And then, would you like to introduce yourself, Tomiko?
Yes, thank you, Katie. And I am Tomika and I am from the Mixed Student Union at UC Davis.
Cool. And then today we have our special guest speaker with us, Mallory Duncan. He is a outdoor representative for various brands, and he's here today to talk to us about his experience in the outdoors and share some of his insights with the everything going on.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much for having me, everyone. And yeah, for the UC Davis Outdoor Program, especially, thanks for having me. I haven't done a presentation like this before, so this is really cool to be part of, and also it's really cool what you guys are doing just to kind of further this conversation and provide a space for people to talk about this type of thing. So, and thanks for everyone for tuning in. So I'll just get things started. I put together just a little PowerPoint presentation on kind of like my background, where I came from, and how I got to the point where I am today as an outdoor industry sales rep. So I'm just gonna pull that up and share that here. And yeah, it's pretty short. I'm really looking forward to hearing everyone's questions. In particular. Let's see. So I tried to keep this down to like basically between 15 and 20 minutes of just going through this stuff. All right, am I all good here? Everyone can see it? All right, cool. All right, so yeah, here's me. This is a photo of me. And I just want to talk a little bit about, like I said, where I came from and how I got to being an outdoor industry sales rep. So a little background. This is my family right here. On the right, you have my dad, Vincent Duncan, my mom, Rhonda Nelson. There's me right there, and my sister on the left, Zenobia. I think this does a really good job of just kind of talking a little bit about how I got involved in the outdoors. From a very young age, like my parents started taking us to, camping trips. So my dad worked for Pacific Gas and Electric Company in California, and we used to go to these PG&E camps, which are essentially these like cabins that you camp out in the woods, and there's like a little lake, and we would go fishing. We would go on some little hikes. We get in the rowboat, and then from there, it kind of just started progressing more. We started doing some car camping trips, and these were like our vacations. So growing up in the Bay Area, there's a lot of really cool places pretty close by that you can go camp at. And instead of, going to Cancun or Hawaii or whatever, my family would go car camp in the Sequoias or wherever it was. And so that was really cool to be introduced to at a pretty young age. And then from there, we started doing some backpacking trips. Obviously, this is a later on photo. Like I think I was 18 when this photo was taken, but at that point, we had been backpacking like consistently. Every summer, we would do like an outdoor trip with the family. So I just wanted to kind of show you guys that. And of course, like I wouldn't be able to be where I was today if it wasn't for my parents. So here's my here are my two lovely parents. And they both played a pretty big role in different roles in kind of getting me involved. And I'll talk more about that as I go on. First off, like, I'll just say, like, my mom is a lawyer. And, you know, there's a lot of things that I didn't realize, and a lot of similarities between that line of work and being involved in the outdoor industry. You know, she was one of the few Black lawyers, still to this day, one of the few Black lawyers at her firm. And so there's a lot of things that I've been able to talk to her about and bounce like ideas and kind of conversations off her revolving around that. So that's been one big way that she's really helped me. And then also, I think one thing that my dad has done, as you know, many things, of course, but one thing that relates to this is, while my mom might disagree, I think my dad was a huge influence when it came to like getting me started skiing at such a young age. So here's me as a small little kid on the slopes of Alpine Meadows. And I think I started skiing, the first time I was on snow. I was probably 18 months old. So I was very, very young. I was that kid in the one piece, in the little tiny skis, doing the like speed pizza down the mountain, just like straight lining in a pizza down the mountain. Like, that was me. And so first off, like, I feel super fortunate to be able to start skiing at such a young age. And, you know, my dad was a very passionate skier, and he would basically drag us up to the mountains whenever we could go up to get on the slopes. And he got introduced to skiing through the same organization that helped support me through skiing, which is the National Brotherhood of Skiers, which I'll talk about a little bit more later. But just want to show you guys that photo. So that progressed, you know, we started going up whenever we could. And at a certain point, me and my sister started kind of entering into some of the local open races. So, you know, this is one of the first races that we ever did. I don't think I've ever actually seen this photo until my parents sent it to me like 2 days ago. But yeah, this was one of the first races that we ever did. There's our like sweet 90s one pieces. And it looks like we might've done pretty well. And then from there, you know, we were going up through the development program in Alpine Meadows. And at a certain point, I was like, this is something I actually want to do. Like, I want to start racing more frequently, and I want to focus on this. And we were already going up all the time, so it worked out quite well. And so, like, I kind of started taking on that role that my dad had initially kind of developed of like, let's go up every weekend. And I was like, yeah, let's go up. I want to learn to ski too. Like, I want to learn to ski race. And so I started ski racing, and I actually started doing pretty well. This is one of the early races I was doing through the development program in Alpine Meadows. And you can see that's me right there. I'm that kid amongst, you know, predominantly white community at the time, you know. And I think at that time, I don't really even know if I realized it. But yeah, I was definitely one of the only Black kids out there skiing. So that was kind of crazy. But yeah, I was doing well, and I think I just really wanted to keep on getting better. And even at this point, as I started doing it more and more and realizing the potential, I was like, yo, I am one of the only Black kids here, and like, I want to like do something cool. Like, I want to be the first African American to win a gold medal at the Olympics. Like, that was my goal when I was a young kid. And so in order to do that, basically I had to be up there more often. You know, anyone who I was competing against was either lived in Lake Tahoe, or they were able to go to like a school where they could race basically every day. And that wasn't necessarily something that was an option for me early on. And so, you know, kids started kind of surpassing me, and I was like, I want to get better and better. So that's kind of where the NBS came into play. The National Brotherhood of Skiers helped support me, and I was good enough where they were like, hey, let's like see if we can take this kid to the next level. And they helped support me and through high school, and I was able to go to a ski academy where I could ski, you know, 6 days out of the week. And that was a really, really unique experience. So here's me with the National Brotherhood of Skiers. If you guys are unfamiliar, the National Brotherhood of Skiers is a Black ski organization, and their whole goal is to put a Black skier in the Olympics and have them win gold, essentially. And so they have funding from all of their participants, and that goes towards a group of athletes. At the time, I was on the national team, and this was crazy. I mean, this whole organization was like a whole new thing for me, because I had never seen so many Black people at the mountain. So that right there in itself was like pretty inspiring. And then to be around these athletes who looked like me, who were like skiing at the same level that I was also really, really cool. And beyond just financially supporting me, it created this community that could support me. And that was incredible. So I was able to go to Sugar Bowl Academy, which is a school up in Lake Tahoe that's specifically designed for Nordic skiers, ski racers, free riders. And I think even like they might have even expanded into some different categories now. But that was what I didn't realize at the time when I went to SBA was I kind of was forced to make this decision that was between these two kind of different worlds. You know, the decision was essentially what you see here on the right, which is what I ended up doing, which is going to this prestigious academy, being one of the few people of color at this academy, and kind of not being as involved in Black culture. So here on the left is this organization I used to be a part of called Jack and Jill, and it's a Black mothers organization that helps like just foster the youth, Black youth, right? And so by choosing to essentially go to SBA, I kind of like wasn't as involved in this Black culture, this traditional Black experience that a lot of people or like this traditional Black experience that like I could have had potentially if I lived in the Bay Area. Instead, I was part of this, you know, very, very unique and incredible experience, but very, very different, as you can see here. And that was crazy for me because I think obviously, you know, there's a lot of different people who went to this school, and I like had I developed incredible friendships with everyone that I was at school with. But I think there was a lot of kids who had traditionally grown up being surrounded by predominantly white people and weren't used to being around Black people. And so when I went to school there, people had these perceptions of what they believed a Black person should be like. Like they maybe saw, you know, they listen to hip hop music, or they see like the movies that people see, you know, Boys in the Hood, these types of things. And their associations of what Black people are is, okay, Black people are gangsters. They're like smooth, cool, like cool people, or they are you know, fast track athletes, whatever it is. And so I didn't feel like I related to what those things were, and people kind of put these perceptions on me without me realizing what was going on. And so I was like, well, am I that? Like, am I like, so am I not Black? Like, what's the deal here? And so it was this very weird experience, you know, for those 5 years of my life where I was kind of struggling with my own identity. And I came out of it, you know, first off, having developed an incredible skill for skiing that I wouldn't have had otherwise. But secondly, I was very burnt out. Like I was trying so hard to be like the best skier I could, and I never really was at the point I wanted to be. So when I got done after taking a year off between high school and college to try and make, you know, this dream that I had of going to the U.S. ski team a reality, and realizing like this isn't going to happen, I was toast. So there's some photos of me skiing right there. But this is like how I felt, and I wanted to show this picture in particular because I remember talking to my my mom. I remember kind of explaining to her how I was feeling, and she was like, "This is how I felt when I got out of law school. Like this is how I felt." And she has this picture in her office today, and it's essentially like I felt like I was this one person in this like this big giant ocean completely alone, and I just swam and swam and swam, and now like I washed up on the beach just so tired and exhausted, and like that's how I felt when I got out of that. It's like what next? What am I going to do next? And I think it's something that a lot of people can relate to, even if you're not like a Black person in the United States, even if you're just like coming out of college. It's like this is an intense experience, and you come out like just having given it your all, and you're so tired. But this photo in particular, it's called The Journey, and it was drawn by Gilbert Young. And here's what he says about it. He says, "The journey depicts all we go through to be who we are. I created it decades ago because I was feeling the same helplessness of our people that I'm seeing in the streets today. I do show that the man's fingers are moving, so you know he's not down for the count, but the same things he might have gone through are still happening today. Our journeys are never ending. We live through good and bad. There are ups and downs. The trick of it is to be grateful every day and to get yourself ready to go up and go at it again." And so like this is something that I still think about. This is like something that's a photo that really speaks to me. And I think it really speaks to the Black experience as well, whether it's in the United States in general, or if it's in the outdoor industry or the outdoors specifically. So I wanted to show you guys that photo. But so after I got done with SBA, I was going to go to UVM for their ski program. Didn't end up making that program. But I was a very competitive person, so I still wanted to do sports. And so I wanted to do a sport that maybe was a more of a traditionally Black cultural experience, more of a Black sport. And so that for me was track. Like I always knew I was fast, so I wanted to do something. I always wanted to do track, but I didn't have that option in high school. So I tried out for the UVM track team, and I ended up making the team as a walk-on, and ran track for 4 years there. And that was like, the reason I did that, like I said, is to be more involved in that kind of what I felt was like a Black cultural or a Black sport, something that was more Black people identified, like, okay, track is like something that we do, you know? And so that was really cool for me to just be around more people of color in the sport that I was doing. And like, granted, you know, you can see this is the UVM track team, you know, it's not the most diverse team at all, but there was, you know, I was the only Black kid at my school. So having even just 5, 6, 7, or like 10 people around felt like really good. So this is my track team here. And then the other thing I did is I started making hip hop music. Like, music was something that got me through like my entire life. You know, I've always taken pride in like making sure I have good artists and making sure I'm listening to good music. And I always loved hip hop music. I loved lyricism. So I was like, cool, like maybe I can get involved more deeply involved in Black culture through hip hop music, and also through things like Black Student Union at UVM. And so hip hop was one of the things I did. And through that avenue, I was able to do some other really cool things, like start doing a little bit of like graffiti writing, and start like getting connected with other rappers who were at the UVM campus. So I was just able to kind of pick up the pieces that I had missed through high school. And so, yeah, I graduated a couple years later, obviously, and there's me and my family. We're very happy. And after that, like, you know, some college graduates do, I moved back home. I went back to the Bay Area, and I started trying to figure out what I was going to do with my business degree and my music minor. And I was living there, and I felt like there was still this piece missing. Like, I had kind of burnt out on skiing. I had stopped doing that through college, but I was like ready to go back to it at that point. I was ready to go back to like the outdoors and like start doing that again. And so I basically, my friend from high school was like, yo, you got to come up to Oregon, because I just learned to kayak, and it's the most fun thing I've ever done since skiing. And I was like, let's do it. Okay, I'm going. And so I hit the Oregon Trail. Here's the Oregon Trail. And I jetted up to a little small town called Maupin, which was a 500-person town, and couldn't have been more different from the Bay Area experience at that time. And there I was back again, the only Black person in this 500-person town in the middle of Oregon, learning to kayak. And I learned to do that. And I started getting more involved in some of these other outdoor activities, and it really just made me happy. Like, being in the outdoors is what's always made me happy, and coming back to that and relearning that experience was really cool. So I started doing some kayaking, some raft guiding, some climbing, and that eventually led back into skiing, and particularly backcountry skiing. And that was like my new passion. It combined the like kind of experience of hiking with the joy of skiing. And so yeah, here's me raft guiding on the White Salmon River, which is, if you haven't been up there before, it's right on the border of Oregon and Washington, and some of the most beautiful white water around. Yeah, so it's super cool for me to experience that again and kind of be reintroduced to the skiing side of things as well. Through that, I was also working. I was kind of doing a bunch of random things. I was raft guiding in the summer. I was ski coaching, and then like ski race coaching. And then I was also working at a gear shop selling backcountry gear. And that like gave me the opportunity to have gear discounts, so make it a little more accessible for me to buy like a backcountry setup. And I also got to meet all these people in the outdoor industry and in like the outdoor culture. And one guy in particular was this fellow named Thomas Seymour, who was a sales rep in the Pacific Northwest, and he worked for Dynafit. So he would come to our shop, and he would do presentations on all of the gear that we sold. Through that, you know, I started to get to know him a little bit better, and we started to go skiing together. And at a certain point, you know, we did the ski trip, and he asked me like, what are you going to do? You know, what's your future look like? What do you want to do 5 years from now? And I remember meeting all these sales reps who would come through the shop, and they always had like a built out van, and they had like, you know, a lot of flexibility in their schedule. And it seemed like they were always having a good time. So I was like, I want to be a sales rep. Like, I want to do what you're doing. And he was like, well, you should work for me. And so I ended up working for Seymour Sales Group for 3 years. And that company repped for a couple of different brands. Dynafit was the big one that I was really passionate about, and they make backcountry ski touring gear. And that was what I was all about at that time. We also worked with these other brands, but this all helped me get more connected with these brands. So like I would go to the sales meetings, and I would meet the CEOs or the North American sales managers, and I would start to develop these connections, and that just like started snowballing into all these opportunities. And essentially this past March, I decided to kind of go out on my own and try and develop my own agency in the outdoor industry. And so that's what I do that's what I do now. I'm an independent sales rep. Right now I work for one brand, and it's called Fulcrum. They make backcountry ski touring poles. In addition to that, I'm also an MBS Olympic Scholarship Fund Committee. So what we do is we select athletes to support with money, like I was. So I'm like on the flip side of that coin now, like trying to bring up those new athletes and help kind of create a more diverse US ski team, a more diverse outdoor industry in general through that avenue. And then on top of that, I'm also an ambassador for a couple different brands. So I'm an athlete ambassador for Oregrown, which is a local organization here in Bend. And then I also work as an athlete for Dynafit, which makes ski touring bindings, boots, poles, all that stuff. And then Forefront, which makes skis. So that's kind of the quick and dirty of my story. And yeah, I guess open up for questions now.
That was really awesome to hear all of that and everything, like your whole story. Like that was so cool, very inspirational, and really awesome. Like that you were able to go through so many different experiences throughout your life, and it was like all happened back to back, and that was awesome. I know I have a couple questions, but does anyone could like type in the chat any questions they have, and we could get the ball rolling on this.
I have questions too. Xander, I feel like maybe you shouldn't have made me co-host. I'm gonna ask all my questions. No. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. That's really awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you want to start off with your questions, Tamiko?
Okay. Thank you. So I resonated with a lot of stuff that you're saying, Mallory, and part of why I started the mixed student union at campus was like that whole identity thing that you were struggling with like these expectations that people put on you just solely based off your appearance, like, and then if you don't fit in that box, then like you're not that identity. And so I'm 3 different things, and so I'd always get attacked like that, like, oh, well, you don't talk Black, or like you don't act Black. And it's like, well, what am I supposed to do? And yeah, so that's why that club is there, so we can celebrate diversity, no expectations on like what you should be or how you should be. So I guess that leads to my questions, like, how did you deal with that, and how do you still do with that to this day? Do you get like, glances, kind of like stares, like, oh, like, why are you here? Like, oh, that's a person of pigmentation. Like, so yeah, I just want to know if you deal with that, and then if you have in the past, how did you overcome that?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely like something I still deal with. I think like the experience of, first off, like coming from a having the opportunities that I've had in my life to grow up in the ski industry and grow up like as a skier. Obviously, like there's a lot of people who don't look like me, and so like that's also affected like who I am. Not growing up necessarily around like surrounded by a bunch of Black people means I don't necessarily fit into that mold of what people think of, like you said, think of like what a Black person should be. And so in some ways, like, it's almost like, well, I'm too white for the black kids and I'm too black for the white kids, you know? So it's like this weird middle ground. So yeah, it's something I still struggle with, but like the reality is like, I mean, I am who I am, and I know there's other people out there who are like me. And the more I've shared my experience, the more I've been able to connect with people who are like me. And what's cool is like, that's a very valuable experience for me to be able to share that with somebody like yourself or somebody else who kind of that resonates with. And so it makes that like connection even tighter. And so I try like and embrace those connections, like those people who I can connect with, who maybe look like me and have that similar experience. Like I try and nurture that connection more, I think. And that's a more of a like very valuable. But the reality is like, I think especially as a kid, like I remember at ski races and stuff, people, you know, some kids would be like, oh, well, like I'm black, like some person who wasn't a person of color would say like, oh, well, I'm like blacker than you are. And I remember that used to really like hit me in a certain way. And I think like part of it is just being like, look, man, you have no idea what you're talking about. Like, you don't know what I'm about. You don't know what my experience is. And the fact that you just said that and showed that to me. So I think one way I deal with that is just, I think in some ways I just try and accept who I am as a person, and hopefully people can respect that. And yeah.
Cool, thank you. And then I guess kind of like a segue with the for like the outdoor perspective, like how do you navigate through that like today? Like if you're not only like outdoors, you worry about your safety, but then also like when you're doing I guess like commercial stuff, do you have to keep that in your mind?
Like, do I have to keep like think about what my outward appearance is if I'm in like
yeah, because like my major is wildlife biology, so it's something that I worry about all the time. Like I'm going to a predominantly white career field. Like, will I have to be on my toes or worry about things like that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I mean, it's definitely something that I think about, and obviously the way that I would deal with that would probably be different than how you would just given your career. But for me, like a lot of what I do is going into ski shops and doing clinics for people. So essentially teaching employees of a shop how to sell the gear that I sell. And a lot of what I'll run into is people not thinking I know what I'm talking about. Like they see me and I'm a black dude and they're like, this dude doesn't know how to ski. This dude doesn't know what backcountry skiing is. Like, and so one way that I deal with that is honestly, like one way I deal with that is by I'll like throw a little nugget in there of information that like only somebody who knows what they were doing would say, or like I'll just like kind of do a little small flex to let people know like,
okay.
Yeah, like,
yo, oh,
what's up? No, like, you can't act like I don't know what I'm talking about, because like I absolutely do. And so that's one way I deal with that. But like the reality is like that's something that it's an unfortunate truth of particularly the outdoor industry is that people will judge you based on what you look like, and they will assume you don't know what you're doing. And that's kind of what conversations like this are trying to change, trying to shift people's perspective to understand that you don't have to look a certain way in order to be an outdoor and to be like involved or be a good skier or know what you're talking about, whether it's skiing or it's biology or it's being a lawyer or whatever. It's like, I think I think that this is like a great place to kind of hopefully make that type of thing become more normal.
Yes. Okay, thank you. I'm done.
Hope that answered your questions.
Yes, thank you so much.
I know you had some questions, Lizzie and Xander, so would you guys like to ask yours now? I love the conversation we're having right now. This is great.
Yeah, so I'm Lizzie. I'm a student at UC Davis, and I'm really curious about this group that you were talking about, the Brotherhood of Skiing. Can you talk more about what this group does or what they did that you found to be so influential? Like what kinds of events? Was it like specific events that they did, or was it just having a group of people that looked like you out on the hill with you skiing, and how people can support this organization and organizations like it?
Yeah, so I'll send a link into the chat box, because there's a really cool little video that REI did that kind of talks a bit about the MBS, and it's like 5 minutes long, so it'd be a really good way for you guys to just see kind of a little bit more about the organization. But essentially, it started back in like the 1970s, and these two guys, Art and Ben, were wanted to create a national organization that would create a space for Black skiers to get together and go skiing together. As it is still the case today, you know, often if you're at the resort and you're a person of color, you're one of few. So their overall goal is to just create a space for people of color where they can feel comfortable on a mountain and see people like them. That's probably the goal in general. And within that, they have also other goals. So the Olympic Scholarship Fund that I was talking about, their goal specifically is to put a Black person on the podium in the Winter Olympics. The way that you can support them is by, you know, donating to the organization, which is nbs.org, and all that money goes towards essentially the Olympic Scholarship Fund, or a large portion of that money goes towards the Olympic Scholarship Fund, which helps fund young athletes who want to get involved in skiing but don't necessarily have like the financial backing to make it happen. So yeah, I'll share some links here in the chat box, and you guys can kind of check out a little bit more about them. But that's kind of a bit about what they do. And that's of all ages, whether you're young. You know, my dad was involved in, my dad and my mom were both involved in the NBS, you know, before I was born. And so they've been doing it for a really long time. And every year they have this event called the NBS Summit, which is super cool. And last time I did it was in Sun Valley. And it's like, you know, man, hundreds of Black people from all over the United States basically fly into Sun Valley, and we just take over the town, and it's great. There's a bunch of parties and go ski at the mountain. There's lessons that they do. So it's just this really cool organization that is kind of like, they're actually revamping the youth program now too. So yeah, that's kind of a little bit about them.
That's super cool. I had another quick question. I know you've been a part of like various groups, and you're in a predominantly white school, and then you went to a sport to get yourself immersed into more of your own culture. And I was curious, like, did you ever have times where you doubted whether or not you should be skiing, or like if you were, and like if you did have times of doubt, like how'd you deal with them?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, especially in high school when I was like dedicating my life to try and make the US ski team, and like continuously failing to perform at the level I wanted to, I definitely had some doubts of like, hey man, like, is this what you should be doing? Like, should your parents be putting all this money towards you doing this thing that you might not even be able to achieve in the end? And like, and I also had doubts of like, because I was not seeing really anyone else out there who looked like me, like, I was like, man, maybe like, you know, people say things like, oh yeah, Black people don't ski. And I was like, man, maybe Black people don't ski. Like maybe there's a reason why, like maybe we're not good at this. Like I definitely felt that way at times. And that's, I mean, I disagree with that now. I think that there's a lot of reasons why Black people don't ski, and it has nothing to do with our physical ability to do that activity. So yeah, certainly times that I felt that way. And I guess the way I got through it is I just had to find the right type of skiing for me. And it wasn't competitive ski racing. For me, like that sucked all of the joy out of it. And backcountry skiing and like more freeride style skiing was what really ended up speaking to me more. And that's what I do now. And I still like love it. And, you know, track, for example, was something that I was, despite not having grown up doing that, it's something I was really good at. At UVM, I have a record at UVM that still exists today. And like, I came out of this out of nowhere, and I was like, damn, like, wow, I'm actually really good at this. Maybe I should pursue this, but I wasn't passionate in the end. Like I did enjoy that experience, but I wasn't passionate about the sport like I was passionate about skiing. So that's why I came back to skiing and found my new kind of love for it.
Nice. That's really cool. So thank you. I was just curious because like I know there's always those times where you have doubt and you're like, what am I gonna do now?
Yeah, for sure.
I had a question. What events did you do for track?
Well, I wanted to be like Usain Bolt. I wanted to like, I remember when Usain Bolt was in Beijing and he like just like beat everyone. I was like, I remember telling my parents, I bet I could beat that dude. So I wanted to be Usain Bolt. I was not Usain Bolt. I wanted to do the 100 because I was like 10 seconds of hard work and you're done. That sounds great.
Yes.
But I ended up running the event that I didn't want to run, which was the 400 initially, which is like very similar. And the reason I think I was good at it is because it's very similar length to like a ski race. So I've been training really hard for these like 1 minute long exertion periods or whatever. And that's what ski racing was. That's what the 400 meter is. It's about a minute. So that translated really well into the 400. And then I actually ended up being really good, particularly at the 400 hurdles. So that was my main event, was the 400 hurdles.
Yeah, I did hurdles too, and triple jump. And yeah, I did spins too. That's what I was wondering.
Nice. Yeah, the other thing I really wanted to do was be a high jumper, but I never got to focus on that because my coach made me do the hurdles.
I did stuff too. And then I had a similar picture.
Oh, nice.
That's me, and that's my dad. So you shared your picture. I was like, oh my God, I have one too.
I saw you were putting something up earlier.
Oh yeah, I was showing Xander. But yeah, that made me feel good. Oh yeah, question.
Yeah. So I see this question in the chat box, which I can answer. So especially ski resorts. So I think that a lot of what it comes down to is, there's a lot of parts to that question, and I'm gonna hit like two things that I think could be really helpful. I think one of the first things is just like the way that skiing is marketed. If you look at like the people who are in kind of like the photos that you see in like your map, or the way, or like the ads that you get on whatever platform you're on, ski resorts don't have representation for people who look like me. And so that's one huge part of it, is just I'm not seeing photos of myself doing that. So like, why would I think that I can, why would people who look like me think they can do that? So that's a big part of it, I think, with ski resorts. And then I think also another part of it is like, just like the athletes that exist in the ski industry, like up until recently, and there's a lot of work still to be done, but you see like there have been really, really successful Black skiers in the industry, and people who I didn't know about until this year, people who I didn't find out about until super recently. In particular, this guy, Keena Pickett was a he was like a TGR athlete, and he was in all these movies, and like I didn't even know about it. Like I never even saw it because this person wasn't like elevated. Like he wasn't like Tanner Hall or one of these people that everyone sees, or like Bodie Miller, or for example, like Andre Horton, Suki Horton, Lauren Samuels. These are all Black athletes who are competitive skiers who were doing huge things in in ski racing, but no one knows who they are because they're just not kind of showcased or focused on in the same way that maybe like their white counterparts or like would be. And so I think that's another part of it too, is like, or even just like having people like who are well known, like Lindsey Vonn, like be at a place where there are other Black skiers, so they can be like, oh look, Lindsey Vonn, like she came here, like whoa, she's here, like I can be inspired to be a skier because this person cares enough to come here and talk to me, and like that can be my role model. Like there's like, those are a couple of things that I think that people can do, or that organizations can do to kind of encourage more accessibility, at least for like us to feel like we can be skiers. And then on top of that, obviously there's like the financial side of things. Like skiing is so expensive. I mean, that's a huge barrier for a lot of people, is like, how are we supposed to afford to pay, not only get all the equipment we need to, but then also drive all the way up to wherever it is that we need to go that's not, near any like urban center or whatever. Plus then we have to buy like a $200 lift ticket. So I mean, bringing those prices down would be a really good thing to do. And one thing that the NBS does do through their organization is, if you're a member of NBS, you can get discounted lift tickets or icon passes. So like, they're offering a discounted icon pass if you buy it right now. You can, it costs like $600 or something like that. So I mean, still really expensive, but like, these are the types of things, like lowering that barrier to entry a little bit. But then on top of that, creating a space where people feel like they will be accepted and they are meant to do this sport. So I think a combination of those two things would be a really good way to help create a more accessible and acceptable like ski resort. I think that answers the question. Yeah.
Sweet. Yeah, representation is huge. I didn't realize like how big of an impact it has to see yourself in something.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, like, you can look at other sports too. Like, for example, I remember Tiger Woods is a great example. Golf is a very white sport, right? But when Tiger Woods started crushing it, I remember like my parents were watching golf, like started watching golf, and I remember being like, oh, cool, like if Tiger Woods can golf, like I can golf, like let's do this thing. And same with like, I don't know if you guys remember, I was listening to this documentary about Freddie Adu, who was was supposed to be one of the greatest soccer players of all time, and he was like 14 years old. He was playing in the MLS, and he's this black kid, 14 years old. He's the same age as me at the time. And that was really cool for me to be like, yo, there's this, and soccer in a lot of ways is in the United States in particular is a bit more, or was a bit more of a traditionally white sport. But Freddie Adu, I think, kind of shifted the kind of the acceptance of that as well, in that, like Black people see this kid who's like going to be the next legend, and they're like, yo, I can play golf too. So I think that's a huge part of it, representation, and making sure that those athletes who are out there doing it do get a part of that spotlight, so that other people can see that and be inspired by it.
Mine is Naomi Osaka.
Exactly. Yes.
Yes.
And
she's Haitian Japanese, and I'm like, that's me. Yes. If she can do it, I can.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's another really, really good example too. Naomi, and then also like obviously Serena and Venus Williams, like that was big. That was really big. So yeah, skiing needs their Tiger Woods, and there are Tiger. I mean, maybe not the greatest skier of all time is maybe not black right now, but there's really, really good skiers out there who are people of color, and maybe they just need to be elevated a little bit more. Any other questions that people have?
I know you kind of started out on your own outdoor rep in like business. Like, what are your goals and plans kind of for that? It's like really awesome to start your own business and everything.
Yeah, so I mean, one of the reasons I really wanted to start my own business was because I wanted to be able to choose the brands that I was working with, so I could work with brands that I believe have a vision for doing something that is going to create a more inclusive outdoor and ski industry, and specifically. So that's one of my really big goals, is just making sure that the portfolio brands I'm working with have a similar type of vision that I have for this, for the ski industry. So one of the brands, the one brand I'm working for right now, I'm having conversations with a couple other ones, but one of those is Fulcrum Poles, and they make backcountry ski touring poles. And one thing that they do already, and why I was psyched to work with them, is because 50% of their ambassador team is female, so they're doing a really good job. And that's another issue that we have in the ski industry is, there's a huge amount more men who are being elevated in this ski industry than there are women. And so the fact that I saw they have 50% men and women, I was like, cool, these people care about equal representation. And then also on top of that, they do direct consumer. So what that means is that, you know, somebody who lives in like the Bay Area where we don't necessarily have like ski shops, they can still purchase that stuff. They can still learn online. Okay, this is what this is. This is how much it costs. It'll ship to my door. I don't need to like go to a ski shop and get that like expert advice. I can get it all through my computer. And so it's a little bit more accessible for that reason. So yeah, a big part of my vision is just working with brands that I align with. And then another part of it is just like, I would also like, I want to do sales. I think that's really important, but I don't want to just perpetuate consumer culture. I want to like also be involved in some of these bigger decisions that these brands have. So like the marketing side of things. So like with Dynafit, I worked with them to partner with an organization called She Jumps, which helps elevate, or just essentially is kind of like the MBS, but for women specifically. And so like I was working with Dynafit on that. And that's something that I would like to continue to do with the brands I work with. Is like, how can I work with the strategic partnerships and have a deeper role in what the brands are doing outside of just selling more gear?
Nice. That's really cool that like you have that vision, because I feel like there is kind of a lack of representation in various, like a lot of outdoors and even sports equipment. So that's a cool goal to have, because I feel like that'll inspire more people to get involved and feel like they could get into these sports too. So that's really cool. And then out of curiosity, sorry, like, do you feel like there are some brands that have like are kind of resistance to having more diversity or having more inclusion in their sports branding?
It's tough. I mean, I think like that's a good question. I think that I think right now in particular, there's a lot of brands who want to appear as if they want to be very and like be more inclusive. So I think as of late, it's tougher to say, because there are brands like pretty much every outdoor industry brand's like, yes, we want to back this thing, and then there are some brands who are actually like doing that, and you can see like through their actions that they're actually making it happen. So like I wouldn't necessarily say there's brands who are like that I know of that I would say are resistant to it, but there's definitely brands that I see and I know that they're actually making the right moves. And like, you know, whether it's like hiring people of color, not just as like the face of an ad, but as like somebody who's running like a diversity, equity, inclusion component of their brand. Like there's actually brands who are out there doing something about it, and then there's some brands who are out there kind of more like talking about it, but not necessarily like making the moves that I'd like to see. Yeah. And then just does that answer your question?
Yeah, that does. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Cool. I see there's a couple questions here in the box. Oh yeah, so I mean, one article that I think is really, really cool that I just read, it just came out yesterday. And it is written, it's in Outside Business Journal. It was written by Stan Evans, who was one of the first ever Black photographers, snowboard photographers. And he basically did a photo shoot this April with, it was the first, like they called it the first all Black ski photo shoot. And he talks, so sorry, the question first off, let me just say is, can you share any resources that you have recently inspired you specific to diversity, equity, and inclusion issues in the outdoor community? So first off, I would just check out this article. It's called, I'll throw it in here as well. But he talks a lot about like what brands can do to be more inclusive and like actually speak, like walk that walk and not just talk that talk. And I think it's an incredibly written article. I will also say, like, I've been really impressed. Like, there are some journals out there that are doing some pretty cool stuff. Like Ski Magazine has been working with a lot of, BIPOC athletes and writers and stuff like that to like create content that speaks really well to me. And I think, cool. Yeah, someone just shared that right there. Awesome. Thank you, Max. And yeah, like, I think that that's a really good place to look. But also, here, let me think for a sec about what other ones I'm looking at. As far as like people to follow, maybe on like social media, like Stan Evans is a great dude to follow. He has some really cool stuff he's putting out there. And Stan Evans is what his name is. Brooklyn Bell is a biker and skier up here in Washington. She's based in Bellingham, and she's doing some really cool stuff as well. She's an artist as well as a graphic designer as well as an athlete. So her like social media is a really good place to look. As far as like books go, I am not even going to try with the book thing because I need to read way more books. Podcasts. Let's see. I'm trying to think of some good ones I've listened to. There's one podcast that's called, it's a ski racing podcast. I can't remember the name of it right now, but they interview this dude named Ralph Green, who he's an Olympic athlete. He was on the Paralympic team, and he also has an incredible story. He grew up in Brooklyn, and then essentially became a transition from being like this incredible athlete, and he ended up losing his leg, and then became like a skier, and just was like dominating the Paralympics. So he's a really good person to work to talk to, and there's a whole podcast that with this guy whose name I can't remember right now, but I will share it with you guys on this when I find the name of it here.
You missed one question right above it.
Okay.
And I'm gonna go while you're finding it, reading it. Christian, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I just wanted to add in there that one of my wildlife biology classes, he was a white man, but he would acknowledge the land that we're on, the native land. And then he would also, if we're ever talking about like historical figures of like importance and their achievements, he would stop to also mention their wrongdoings or their racism and like have quotes of like things that they would journal and stuff. And he would also try to give examples from studies from people of more diverse backgrounds. So like women or people of colors, instead of just using white. And he would have their picture in addition to like the studies and the graphs. And I felt like he did a really good job in like incorporating it. And it was a wildlife biology class. So yeah.
Nice.
Go ahead, take it away.
Yeah, so in answering that question, yeah, so I mean, I think that first off, like being as clued into these types of conversations that are happening right now is one really good way to do that. Like, I'll just say right off the bat, like I can speak from my experience. And so like, I don't have all the answers to everything. But so I can only really speak from my experience. But I would say like one thing that has been really like something that I guess I see other people doing, that like people who are non-POC or who are white, like something that's like spoken to me is just like allowing just like allowing somebody to share their experience and not take it as an attack or a personal front is like a really cool thing. And then like like especially during kind of last May, June, with a lot of the sudden awareness for just inequality happening in this country, like there was like a large range of ways that people kind of like approached me or like reacted to that. And like one of the things that I like held in high regard was like, people would reach out to me, and some folks would like, I guess tell me like their experience, tell me like what they're feeling, but like allowing for somebody else to kind of tell you what their experience is, as opposed to like kind of telling them what your experience is. Like I guess the better way to say it would be like just listening to what someone else has to say, is like I think one way that is really beneficial. And as far as creating a more inclusive outdoor industry, or more inclusive environment in the outdoors, yeah, man, like I don't know, that's hard. I don't know. I gotta think about that one. It's a good question though. I wish I knew the answer. I gotta think about it. Yeah, for sure. I feel that. I mean, I will say, Kirsten, like the fact that you're here in this space right now, being a part of this conversation, is you're doing something great right now. So thank you for being here. Any other questions?
I'll go for one if nobody else is.
Cool.
I'm just gonna go ahead and copy and paste like a little paragraph from the article that you wrote in Ski Magazine. I would love to just talk about like tokenization for a minute. This paragraph I think is like expresses your feelings post the murder of George Floyd. It expresses that in a really like captivating way. Just talking about how it was isolating to be the only Black person in a lot of these predominantly white spaces, and how people were looking to you as like the only person for guidance during that time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you underscoring like white acceptance rather than Black empowerment is like an important distinction to make. And I'm just curious about like how those feelings and that experience as a Black man in a predominantly white space has evolved over the past year, because I think a lot of people have been sitting with yeah, like you said, a lot of people have become aware of the realities of this country in a new way. And I'm curious about if and how your experience as a Black man has changed in the outdoor community in the past year with regard to tokenization in particular.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think like one thing that it's tough because like one thing that I have been really excited about seeing, and I'm going to talk specifically about like, I mean, here in Bend, one thing that I've been really excited about seeing is just like more people trying to be involved, like be listening to this conversation and be involved in this conversation, and also create spaces for these conversations. Like it's really cool to see that. So like that's one way I've seen like very positive growth in that regard. And at the same time, like that's been really cool. But as like a athlete and ambassador for these brands, like one thing that's been tough about that is like I can't just be like, I feel like it's hard for me to just be a skier who's like a skier, and like that's what I do. It's like as an ambassador, I have to be a skier, but I also have to be like an advocate for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Like that's like part of my role, like for brands. Whereas for some maybe a non-Black skier, they can just be a skier and just do their thing and like not have all this extra baggage on top of it. So that's one way that's kind of been tough too. It's like, okay, this is great, we're having these conversations. Like I'm really excited to be a part of that, but I also feel that pressure to like, I got to know what to say, and I have to be able to speak to this experience, and that's part of who I am as an athlete to these brands, as opposed to just being an athlete. I have to be a spokesman as well. So it's like, it's tough, man. And yeah, that's like, but like at the same time, like I'm also glad to take on that role as well, because I think it is for the betterment of the outdoor industry, and it's definitely something that I want to be able to see that there are people like myself who can grow up skiing and not feel like they have to set aside some part of their Black identity in order to also participate in the ski industry. So like I'm down to also be that person at the same time. So yeah, I think that answers it. Is there a follow-up on that? Okay, cool.
No, I mean, I always have a lot of follow-ups, but that's phenomenal. Thank you.
And yeah, like this ski industry piece, if you guys haven't read it, yeah, like definitely something worth checking out too, just in regards to like all the stuff we're talking about. Like this is my experience, and like the reality is everyone's experience is so different. So, but I would say like it's something worth checking out, even in, because there's a lot of stuff in there that I haven't necessarily talked about here in what Xander just posted. And yeah, someone can share that. Adam, Becca, if you guys want to share that. Cool. Thanks, Max.
I have a question. And like so I read the article, but I guess I need a little clarification. So in the heat of it, when it started, did you feel like you couldn't like participate because you felt like you weren't, because like identifying as Black, or?
So the reason I felt like the reason I didn't feel comfortable participating is because I just felt, and like maybe these feelings weren't necessarily like the right reaction, and maybe they were wrong founded, but I felt like I was gonna be this, like I felt like I was gonna be one Black person in this like group of like non-Black people marching for this cause, and I felt like I was just putting myself in this like magnifying glass, and like everyone's gonna be looking at me, everyone's gonna be coming up to me, and I felt like I was putting myself in this really uncomfortable situation. Whereas if I had been in like the Bay Area and I had been around a lot of other people who looked like me, it would have been this very empowering event. Like I would have felt so like I would have felt a lot better about being there, because I knew I wasn't just the only, I would have known I wasn't just the only one. So that's why I was uncomfortable with it when I was in Bend, is because I was like, who's gonna say what to me? Like this is gonna be uncomfortable. Like I don't want to be part of this in this town particularly. And I mean, I've since like kind of second or like doubted that a bit more, because after kind of talking to more people locally about what those protests were actually like, it wasn't necessarily like that. But I think somewhere in I think I just felt that way, like that's how it was going to be. And you know, I think to some degree there was some truth to that, but maybe not to the extent that I thought it was going to be.
Do you feel like you've had like have figured out ways maybe, or like have a sense of when that solidarity is like genuine versus performative, or is that like, you know, is that kind of like, seems kind of like a really hard thing to parse sometimes, and especially with just how easy it is to post something on social media, or yeah, I mean, is that sort of something that like you feel like you have a better handle on now maybe than a year ago, or is it like still tricky?
Like from a person to person thing, or from like a athlete to brand, or from like a like business, or like?
I guess more like athlete to brand. I mean, but and not like, oh, so you can like, you know, see like, oh, this person's being fake or whatever, but just sort of like so that you can decide what is, you know, like what is worth your attention and time. Yeah, I mean, I guess what brand, person, whatever you feel like is
yeah, like you said,
impactful.
I mean, like you said, like it's so hard, especially with social media, and particularly during that time when we were all locked down, you know, and there's like social media is just going crazy, and it's like all these people are throwing stuff up, and it was really hard during that period of time to differentiate with like, okay, who's just posting this and who actually is like feeling this and like, I don't know, maybe like more genuine in their like their posting or whatever, like particularly in that time, it was really, really hard early on. But yeah, I think like now, like, I think it kind of takes me back a little bit to, I think, man, it's tough because it's really hard, I think, for people who haven't necessarily grown up around like people of color to like be able to genuinely like do what to interact in the way that feels good for like a person of color. So like, and it takes me back to like SBA, you know, where it's like some people grew up in like an urban environment where they're surrounded by other Black people or other people of color, and they're kind of more used to like dealing with this circumstance. And so through that, like maybe the way that they interact felt more genuine, or felt like I wasn't being thrown into this box or whatever, versus some people didn't come from that environment. And whether they meant to or not, I had a much different feeling just by the things that they said and the way that the situations they brought up, or yeah, like it was very, very, it was almost like clear in that way. But yeah, I mean, I think it's still tough to know, but at the same time, I feel like people are pretty transparent in the stuff that they say and the things that they do. And that gives you a pretty quick insight into like, or it can at least give you a quick insight into like what their motives are, or if they actually, you know, have if they actually like care about creating a more diverse and inclusive US, a more equal US, I guess. Like, and like you can see that through people's, just like by looking at somebody, what they're doing in the long term. Like, are they just posting this thing on like Juneteenth and then that's it, boom, like I'm on to the next? Or are they like more involved? And not everyone has to post stuff about, you know, about like racial inclusion. Not everyone has to do that. Like that doesn't have to be your platform on social media. And like, I don't expect that for people. But if I'm like seeing somebody throw something up and then I also like, I don't know where they're coming from on it. I don't know. I feel like it's relatively clear. I don't know. I kind of feel like it kind of divulges itself in a way. And yeah, I mean, like, it's something that I'm still like, it's something that I still like think about for sure. And it's something that I'm not always certain. And I try not to jump to conclusions on what people, you know, whether they're truly dedicated to creating a, you know, better equality and more diversity in the outdoor industry in particular. But I think that a lot of the time you can kind of tell pretty quick, or you can tell at least once you start to get to know somebody where their like true motives lie, I guess. Yeah. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I mean, that makes total sense to me. Like, it's interesting to see like how like a year ago there was this huge thing and like all this steam and all of this energy, and then like as people started to sort of like, you know, like that sort of dissipated somewhat, or like a lot of people, like not nearly as much of that is happening right now on like social media and stuff as it was. And I think a lot of people were really genuinely interested in helping, or like, oh wait, like now, wait, yeah, that's right, this is a thing, you know, but just like feeling very removed from it. And then when there is like a movement, or when there is like all of this buzz, it's really easy to sort of like get in on like that existing like structure of like a movement, and then, or the perception of one. And then like once it sort of like started to like lose steam, or like not lose steam, but just like a lot of people stopped posting about it. Totally. It's like people who are genuinely interested, but just sort of, it's no longer like being put in front of them. It's definitely like an interesting, like, it's not so black and white, you know. It's like, it doesn't mean that those people are like fake, or that they like, you know, whatever, but it's just sort of like this, like, it's just not as present in their lives, I guess, and easier to sort of like move on. I think that affected a lot of us, or if not all of us, in that way.
Yeah, for sure. And like the Black Lives Matter movement like has been doing this thing where it goes up and down. Like people get, so an event happens where it's like very you know, for example, in the George Floyd circumstance, it's like very, very public. Everyone sees this video, everyone knows what's up, and it's hard to ignore that situation. And there's this like spike of everyone's like, oh, whoa, like this isn't okay. But then, yeah, you like fast forward 10 months to maybe the George Floyd trial, and it's like, how many people are still paying attention to what's happening in that, even though it's 10 years later, but it's the same thing. Like how many people are still like paying attention to what's going on there? Or how many people are paying attention to like all the other things that happen between now and then? And yeah, like you said, it's not like because you haven't been consistently talking about racial inequality the entire time between now and then, like I'm not going to say, oh, you're fake, you know, like that's not my role. That's not what I'm looking to do. And like, I don't think that's the correct way to treat it. But it's like, you know, there's a spectrum though. Like there's like something in between of, you know, you can still be participating in some way in that conversation and not be going the full extent or not going as hard as you were, you know, whatever, 10 months ago, you know? So I think it really is, it's tough to like say exactly what makes somebody like someone's doing the right thing versus the wrong thing. Like that's not what it is. It's all a spectrum.
Definitely. You said some good stuff, and I feel like it was able to resonate because it's like, I don't know, as everything happened last year with George Floyd, and now it's like basically been a year, and it's like, what do you do now? Like, how do you continue the movement? And I feel like that's always a big question because like you don't know how to deal with these issues because like there's so much going on, but I feel like this was a good conversation to have.
Yeah.
Do we have any last minute questions? I think this is like this was a good conversation we had. It's a little over 7, so any more? Nice.
Great. Well, yeah, thank you for having me, everyone. And thank you for all your incredible questions so I didn't have to just ramble. Hopefully I didn't ramble too much. Yeah, it's been really, really cool conversation. And yeah, I hope these can continue to happen. I'll be there for the next ones too. So thanks.
Yeah. Well, thank you for taking your time to come and speak with us. We were all really excited and offered a lot of great insight and opened up a great conversation. So we really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing your story and experiences with us.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh, yes, the Oregon Trail reference, I definitely shot out air out of my nose. I was like, that's hilarious.
It's real. Oregon Trail is real. You can see it. Mount Hood was in there.
I remember playing that game as a kid on the PCs. Every time you get to the river, it just.
Yeah. I think I died from like starvation, or there's something in particular that like, yeah, I never got to California, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's like maybe I showed my age. Does anyone like know that game? It's so nice.
Great job, Mel.
Thanks, Kelsey. That's my sister.
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. Yeah, Oregon Trail. Yeah, definitely. I think it was dysentery, Mallory. I think you always died of dysentery.
That's what it was. Thank you.
Bet. All right. Well, good job. Killed it.
Thanks.
Take care.
See you later. See you soon.
See you soon.
Xander, you have any other questions?
Yeah, but I think we should let people trickle out. Mallory, thank you so much, man. I like really appreciate you taking the time and like
yeah,
sharing such a personal story too. I know that this was like, yeah, like even way better than I was hoping and imagining it would be. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm really glad. Thanks for the entire UC Davis outdoor program for like having me here, and thank you for reaching out, Xander. Appreciate it. And yeah, hopefully we can connect in person sometime soon.
Yeah, no kidding. Over
All right, great. Well, on that note, I think I'm gonna go ahead and end the meeting. Everybody go have a good night.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.